This sword was meant for an alien king, but it chose a human instead. The sun was setting on the alien world of Arvok. The sky was red and filled with smoke. The ground was dry and cracked. A human man named Ray Carter walked alone through the battlefield. He wore an old space jacket, torn and dirty. His boots stepped over metal scraps and burned bones. He had never seen such destruction before. Everything around him was dead and silent. Ray had been sent to explore the ruins of an old alien war. His mission was simple: collect data, take pictures, and return. But what he found was not just a history, it was something still alive. Buried in the ashes, glowing faintly, was a sword. The sword looked old but powerful. Its blade was silver, curved, and covered with strange alien symbols. The handle had a red gem in the middle. It was half buried in the dirt, like it had waited for someone to find it. Ray slowly walked toward it. Something inside him told him not to touch it, but his hands moved anyway. He reached down and grabbed the sword. As soon as his fingers wrapped around the handle, the ground shook. A loud ringing filled his ears. Images flashed in his mind: explosions, alien warriors, screams, fire. He saw a large figure, strong and proud, holding the same sword high in the air. Then a scream echoed through the air, not from the past, but real and near. "Put that down, human," said a sharp voice behind him. Ray turned fast, raising the sword without thinking. A tall alien girl stood in front of him. She had deep red eyes, glowing softly in the smoke. Her skin was pale violet, and her armor was battle-worn. She pointed a weapon at his chest, but her hands were shaking. She didn't shoot. Her eyes were filled with pain, not anger. "That sword," she said, her voice softer now, "belonged to my father." She stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid. Of the sword itself, Ray didn't move. He could feel heat coming from the blade. "Like I was alive. I didn't know," he said quietly. "I just found it." The girl stared at him, her lip trembling. "My name is Viraya," she said. "My father was the last war chief of this land." Ray looked around, at the ruins, at the broken flags. "This was your people's final battle," he said, more to himself than to her. "Yes," she nodded. "And they all died." Viraya slowly reached out, but not for the sword. She touched the ground where her father had fallen. "This place is sacred," she whispered and cursed. Ray lowered the sword, offering it back to her, but the sword didn't let go. It was stuck to his hand, glowing brighter. Viraya's eyes widened. "That's not possible," she said, stepping back. "Only blood can hold it." "I'm not one of you," Ray said, confused. "I'm just a human." The sword pulsed with red light, then went quiet. Viraya looked at him like she had seen a ghost. She put down her weapon. "You saw something when you touched it." She said, "Yes," Ray replied. "Visions, battles. A man with this sword." She nodded slowly. "That was my father." They sat near the ruined stones as night came. The wind howled through the dead forest. Viraya lit a small fire, her hands still shaking. She looked at Ray and said, "Maybe this is fate." Ray didn't believe in fate. He believed in facts, missions, and survival. But something about the sword, about the voice in his head, felt real, like it had called to him. He held the sword in his lap, feeling its weight, not just in his arms but in his soul. "What happens now?" he asked. Vera looked at the stars above. "Now," she said, "we find out why it chose you." Far away, deep under the ground, something ancient stirred. A machine's eye blinked red, sensing the sword's return. A signal was sent into the stars. The weapon of the old war was alive again. And the hunter of sword-bearers had awakened. A scream cut through the cold night air. Sharp like broken glass, Ray jumped to his feet. The sword already in his hand before he knew it. Viraya was gone. The fire was still burning, but the sand. Around it had strange marks, long clawed footprints, deep and fresh. He spun around, heart pounding, eyes searching the dark Viraya. He called, but only the wind answered. The sword in his hand glowed red, then blue, then pulsed like a heartbeat. It pointed him north without his control. He didn't understand how, but the sword was showing him the way. His legs moved without thinking. He followed the path across jagged rocks and black sand. The sky above turned purple with stars. But no moon, only shadows. Suddenly he saw her. Viraya was standing in the middle of a circle of black stones. She was surrounded by tall figures in cloaks. Their eyes were covered, but they hissed like snakes. Ray stepped closer, his voice low. "What are they?" She didn't answer, but her hand was behind her back. Slowly reaching for her blade, one of the cloaked creatures turned toward Ray, spoke in a broken voice. "The sword is not yours. Human, give it to us." Ray didn't move. Vera whispered. "They are relic hunters, cursed creatures who feed on ancient power." Ray held the sword tightly. It burned hotter now. Glowing white like a small sun, the relic hunters flinched. Stepping back, Ray raised the blade, and it felt light in his hands. The sword moved like it had its own will. Guiding his arms, he swung it once, and the ground cracked. The cloaked ones hissed louder and vanished in a cloud of smoke. Viraya ran to him, her breathing fast. "I didn't think you'd follow," she said. Ray looked at her, confused. "You disappeared." She nodded slowly. "I had to know if the sword would protect you without me." Ray narrowed his eyes. "You were testing me." She looked away, ashamed. "My people don't trust easily, not anymore." They walked through the night in silence. When the sun rose again, they reached the edge of a giant canyon. Below them was a ruined city made of glass and bone. Viraya sat on a rock, staring at the sword in his hand. "I was trained to take that sword after my father died," she said. "But when I touched it, it turned cold." Ray didn't know what to say. He felt like the sword had taken something from her, something sacred. "My tribe is gone," she continued, her voice empty. "I'm a warrior without a people, a daughter without a father. And now, not even a sword-bearer." Ray sat beside her. "I never asked for this," he said softly. Viraya turned to him, her eyes wet but steady. "But you didn't run, even when the sword burned you." Ray showed her his palm. Where a faint mark now glowed, it left something. He said, "Like it marked me." She looked at the mark, then at him. "My father used to say, 'The sword chooses not who is strong, but who is willing.'" Ray gave a small smile. "I guess I'm just stupid enough to hold on." Viraya laughed quietly for the first time. "You're something human." They began their descent into the dead city. Viraya explained that this place was once the heart of her people. Now it was filled with ghosts' memories and machines that no longer knew peace. As they walked, strange whispers echoed between the broken walls. The sword pulsed each time they passed a pillar, like it remembered. Ray felt the weight of the past pressing down on him. Suddenly, the floor beneath them cracked, and they fell. Ray hit the ground hard, dust flying into his eyes when he looked up. He saw a giant metal face staring down at him. Its eyes were dim, but its mouth moved. "Bearer of the blade," it said in a cold voice, "you have returned." Viraya stood quickly, pulling him to his feet. "This is the guardian," she whispered. "It protected our secrets." The machine slowly rose, chains falling from its arms. "Will you accept the memory of war?" it asked. Ray looked at the sword, then at Viraya. He didn't know what that meant, but something in him whispered yes. The guardian's chest opened, revealing a seat without thinking. Ray stepped forward and sat. The machine's light flickered, and then it screamed. A beam of light shot into Ray's mind, filling him with visions, Vera's father. The battles, the betrayal, the blood, the day the sword was hidden. Viraya screamed his name. But Ray didn't hear her. His eyes glowed bright white, and the sword rose into the air. The past was pulling him in, and now? He wasn't just holding the sword, he was becoming part of its story. The night sky tore open like paper as the machine guardian let out one final roar. Then silence, so sharp it hurt. Ray collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, his body soaked in sweat. His eyes were wide, but they didn't see the present. They saw something older, something buried deep inside the sword. Vera knelt beside him, shaking his shoulder. "Ray, speak to me," she whispered, but his lips were frozen. He had seen visions of battles that were never recorded. He had felt the pain of Aria's father, and the weight of thousands of alien warriors lost to time. When his voice returned, it was barely a whisper. "I was there," he said. "I stood beside him." Your father, Viraya, froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at him like he was a ghost. "Tell me what you saw," she said slowly. Ray placed a hand on the sword and shivered. He died protecting something. A child, he turned toward her. Viraya stepped back like she had been struck. She had never told anyone about that moment. She was too young to remember. But the story said her father fell, covering a hidden escape tunnel. She had always assumed it was legend. Now a human repeated it word for word. Ray stood, still shaky. "The sword showed me everything." But only for a moment. He looked down at his hands. "I'm not sure I came back whole." Before Vera could answer, the ground rumbled under their feet. A wall in the corner cracked open slowly, revealing a staircase made of black stone. Neither of them spoke, they just followed. The staircase led down into a chamber filled with glowing crystal pillars. Inside, floating above a stone altar, was another sword, shorter, sleeker, and glowing blue instead of red. Ray stared at it. But the red sword on his back grew hot and heavy. He could feel it growling in his bones, as if jealous Viraya stepped closer to the blue blade. "I've heard of this," she said. "It's the twin." Ray looked at her, puzzled. "Twin?" She nodded, her voice hollow. "They say two swords were made from one god metal. They were never meant to be used at the same time." Ray could feel something was wrong. The blue blade began spinning in the air, shaking, vibrating violently. Viraya took another step, but the red sword on Ray's back flew forward on its own. It clashed with the blue one mid-air, sending a shockwave through the chamber. Crystals shattered and light turned to fire. Both swords dropped to the ground. Like they were alive and angry, Viraya's knees buckled. She clutched her chest, gasping, "The swords." "They remember," she said. Ray picked up the red blade again, feeling it pulse like a warning. The blue one refused to be touched. Sliding away like it was rejecting them both, suddenly voices echoed around the chamber. Not human, not aliens, something. "Ancient, you carry war into a resting place," said the voice. "You have awakened the forgotten." From the shadows, three ghostly figures stepped forward, their armor glowing faint green. Each held a broken weapon and a hollow gaze. Viraya fell to her knees, recognizing their faces. "They were guardians," she whispered. "They died before I was born." The spirits raised their arms, not to attack, but to test. One pointed at Ray and spoke. "If you wish to carry the red blade, you must face the echoes of all who carried it before." Ray's mouth was dry, but he nodded. "I accept." The spirits turned into light and rushed into him. He staggered back, falling onto the cold floor. Flashes exploded in his mind: battlefields, betrayals, fires, and endless screaming. He heard their final thoughts, felt their broken hopes. Some were proud, some were mad, some wanted revenge. All of them lived inside the sword now, and all of them were watching him. Vera held his hand through it. Even though it scorched her fingers, she whispered, "Don't let them swallow you, Ray. Her voice was the only thing keeping him sane. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Then Ray sat up straight. His eyes now glowed faint red, and his hand held the sword like it belonged there. He was still Rabat, not the same. He had become the sword's final heir. Virea looked at him with awe and fear. "You passed the trial," she said. "But now they will all come for you." Ray nodded slowly, then let them come. Outside the dead city, shadows gathered on the hills. Dark ships flew silently in the sky. The sword had chosen again, and all who wanted it now knew who held it. The sky above the ruined city cracked with thunder, though there were no clouds. Rian stood on top of a broken tower, watching a fleet of dark alien ships slowly descend from the stars. They didn't fire, they didn't speak. They only hovered in silence like vultures waiting for the dying below. The sword in his hand trembled again. Not in fear, but in warning. Beside him, Vera stared up at the ships. Her face calm, but her hand tightly gripping her side blade. She said nothing for a long time, then whispered, "They've come to take it." Rian nodded. "But they'll have to take me first." Without a sound, one of the ships opened. From inside walked a tall alien dressed in golden armor. Unlike anything Rian had seen before, the armor had no scratches, no dust, and the figure moved like wind through water. It didn't walk toward them, it glided. When it spoke, the voice didn't come from its mouth. It echoed directly into their minds, deep and smooth, like falling snow. "You are holding a relic that belongs to no one." Rian stepped forward, holding the sword low but ready. "I'm not giving it up." The golden figure tilted its head, curious rather than angry. "It is cursed," it said. "Why cling to it?" "Because it chose me," Rian said, "and I don't betray those who choose me." The golden figure raised its hand and pointed. "You carry the weight of the dead," it said. "You will break." Viara stepped between them, her voice sharper than ever. "He will not break." She said, "He will change." The golden figure didn't reply. It simply turned and vanished like smoke. But the sky behind it lit up. Thousands of figures in black armor dropped from the ships like rain. A silent invasion, no war horns. No warning, just shadows falling toward the city. Rian and Viria ran down the tower steps, their boots hitting old stone. Every hallway echoed like a drumbeat of war. Outside, the city's defense systems powered on, ancient and rusted, but still. Alive lights turned red, walls rose from the earth, and drones began to activate. But they knew it wouldn't be enough. In the heart of the city was the last defense, the Temple of Flame. That's where they were heading. It was said to be the final forge where the sword had once been born. And now it waited for its final purpose when they entered the temple. The air turned hot, not from heat, but from memory. Fire danced along the walls without touching them. The sword grew heavier in Rian's hands, as if sensing home. Vera knelt in front of a glowing altar and began chanting in her language. Rian didn't understand the words, but the room responded. The flames brightened, and the air thickened. The sword lifted from his hands and floated toward the center of the altar. Then something strange happened. A second sword began to form. In the fire, not red like the first, this one burned silver and gold. Virea's voice shook. "It's happening," she said. "The sword is calling its mate." Rian stepped back as both swords floated together. Spinning in opposite directions, the fire screamed as if alive, and the ground trembled the moment they touched. A wave of force exploded from the altar, throwing both of them to the floor. Images filled the room, cities burning, planets screaming. And two warriors standing side by side. One was Viraya's father, the other looked like Rian, but older. When the vision faded, Rian sat up slowly, his eyes wide. "I saw myself," he whispered. "But it wasn't me." Viraya helped him. Up her face pale, "I think." "You were reborn," she said. I think the sword didn't just choose you, it remembered you." Before they could speak again, a loud blast shook the temple. The enemy had entered the city. Time had run out. Rion grabbed both swords, one in each hand. They didn't resist, they accepted. 2 flames, 1 soul. He turned to Viraya, his voice steady now. "We finish this here, above them." The ships dropped low, the final attack ready to fall, but so was he. This time, the sword would not fight alone. It had a warrior, and his name was known now: Rion, bearer of flame, the one who came back. The sky above the burning city turned gold, not from the sun, but from the clash of 2 ancient swords. Rion stood in the heart of the ruined temple. His feet planted, his hands gripped tightly around both blades. Behind him, Vira's breathing slowed as she watched a storm of memories swirl in the air around them. These were not her memories, and not Rion's either. They belonged to the swords. And the swords were remembering too much. All around the temple, fire flickered without heat. Ghosts of warriors, forgotten kings, fallen gods all appeared in flashes, whispering one name again and again. Not Rion, not even her father, but a single word spoken in a dead language neither of them knew, until Rion whispered it back without thinking. Cathal. Thaw fire snapped to attention like it had heard a command. The 2 swords vibrated, and then suddenly, only one remained. Both blades had merged into a single weapon, longer, brighter, and far more dangerous. The metal pulsed like a living heart, and in the silence, even Viraya looked afraid. "What did you say?" she asked, voice barely there. Rion turned slowly, confused. I don't know," he said. It just came out before she could speak again. The temple floor split in 2, stone cracked, and fire poured out from below. A figure rose from the flames, not a ghost, not a living thing, but something between. Its face was smooth like glass, and its body shimmered like melted steel. "You carry the final flame," it said in a voice that echoed like thunder and whispers mixed together. "The trial begins now." Rion lifted the sword as the air around him thickened. He couldn't breathe properly. Each breath came with weight. The figure charged without a sound, its body twisting unnaturally. Rion swung, but the blade passed through smoke. It wasn't solid, was memory made real. A piece of the sword's past, made to test him. The figure reformed behind him, and struck with a flaming arm. Rion dropped to his knees, pain searing through his back. He rolled away, lifted the sword again, and screamed as he slashed through fire. This time, the sword burned white, and the enemy staggered. Vera shouted, "It's feeding on your fear. Don't give it anything." Rion stood, blood on his cheek, but his grip was tight. He closed his eyes and let go of the fear. In that moment, the sword roared to life. Lighting up the whole chamber, he swung once clean, precise, and full of power not his own, the flame being split apart in midair and vanished into light. The room fell still again. Viraya ran to him, but he didn't fall. He stood taller, stronger somehow. The sword had accepted him, not just as bearer but as master. Behind them, a deep voice echoed from the temple walls. "Cathal has returned," Vera whispered. That was the name of the first flame-bearer. Rion's eyes glowed faintly now, and in his head he heard hundreds of voices, all calm, all watching, but outside there was no calm. The enemy had broken through the city gates. Marching in silence, the dark army moved like a river of shadows. At the front was the golden figure from before, but it no longer floated. Now it walked, sword in hand, eyes burning with rage. It looked up at the temple and pointed. "Bring him to me," it said. Thousands obeyed without question. Rion turned to Viraya. "I don't think this sword was made to protect a city," he said. She tilted her head. "Then what was it made for?" Rion looked toward the army and grinned just a little. To end wars, he stepped out of the temple doors, the new sword humming in his hand. His shadow stretched long over the stairs, and the moment the first enemy soldier raised his rifle, Rion vanished in a blink, only to reappear behind them, 10 bodies falling in silence. The sword wasn't just fast, it was alive. It moved like it had waited centuries to be used again. The enemy panicked, their lines broke, but the golden figure kept walking, unshaken. Virea joined the fight with her side blade, spinning and slicing with alien grace. She shouted to Rion, "They won't stop unless you defeat him, the golden." One Rion nodded. "Then tell him I'm coming." The flames behind him followed, and with every step he took, the battlefield began to remember, not just a man, not just a sword, but a legend. Walking again beneath a burning sky, the world stopped when Rion's blade met the golden warrior's sword. The air cracked like glass, and time seemed to bend around them. Everything else, the army, the fires, the screams fell away. Only the two of them remained, standing in a dead silent battlefield lit by red sky and rising dust. The golden warrior said nothing, but his eyes spoke every word Rion feared to hear. "You are not ready. You are not worthy. You are not him." Rion's grip tightened as his sword burned hotter. "I don't have to be him," he said through his teeth. "I just have to end you." The golden figure struck with inhuman speed. Rion blocked just in time, but the force threw him into a stone pillar. He rolled, got up, and charged again. His sword moved on its own, like it remembered how this enemy fought before. But the golden warrior laughed for the first time. "Poor boy," he said, "even the blade is confused. It remembers him, not you, far behind them." Virea sprinted through the chaos, dodging arrows and blades. She reached the fallen spire, where an old energy node pulsed like a heart. She placed her hand on it and whispered her code. The node flared, activating a shield around the inner city. Civilians and healers would be safe now, but Rion, he was beyond the shield. Alone, inside the storm, Rion was losing. Each swing of the golden blade was heavier, faster, sharper. He was being pushed back, step by step. Then his foot slipped on blood, and the enemy's sword sliced across his chest. He fell, gasping. The sword slid from his hand. The golden figure raised his weapon high. "It ends now," he said. But just as the blade came down, another blocked it. Virea stood over Rion, her blade shaking in both hands. "Not yet," she growled. "You won't take him, not like this." The golden warrior paused. Then he lowered his sword, stepped back, and turned to walk away. "You'll understand soon," he said. The sword chose him, yes, but it was a cruel choice. He disappeared into the smoke, leaving behind silence and broken ground. Vera dropped beside Rion, helping him sit up. His chest burned, but the wound had already started to close. The sword's light healed faster now. "Why did he stop?" Rian asked. Virea looked down, her voice distant. "Because he wanted to break you, not kill you. He wants you to doubt." That night, the city was quiet. Rian lay inside a recovery pod, staring at the ceiling. Kelra entered. Finally, back from her mission in the northern ridge, she stood over him, silent for a long time. Then she said the words that chilled the room. "You were supposed to die out there." Rian sat up slowly, confused. "What?" Kelra didn't blink. "The council gave orders," she said. "They believed if the sword left you, it would return to one of us. They sent you into that fight to lose." Rian stared at her, heart sinking. "And you?" he asked. She looked away. "I disobeyed." Rian rose to his feet, weak but steady. "You saved me." "He saved me," she said softly. "I saved him. The man you remind me of, Rian." stepped close, the sword lighting between them. "I'm not your father," he said. "I never will be." Kelra nodded slowly. "I know," she whispered. "But this sword, this path, it connects more than just blood." Before they could speak more, the chamber lights flickered red. An alert flashed across the screens. Unknown energy surged southeast of the city. Vera rushed in, face pale. "There's something waking up." "In the ash fields," she said. "Something older than the war." Kelra looked at Rion. "You have a choice," she said. "Go deeper and lose what's left of your humanity, or walk away now and let the past die again." Rian stared at his sword. Now calm and silent in his grip, he thought of the city, the faces, the screams, the prophecy. And he thought of his own reflection. Was he still himself, or becoming someone else? He walked toward the command center and didn't stop, not for questions, not for doubts, not even for her, because the past was calling, and he had to face it alone. Ash rained from the sky like soft snow as Rion stepped into the field of silence. No wind, no voices, no life, only black ground stretching to the horizon. The sword pulsed on his back, not glowing, not warm, just. Watching behind him, Kelra stood on the ridge, her hand resting on her heart as if afraid it might stop. She had said goodbye without speaking. Because some endings didn't need words, Rion walked alone toward the monolith buried halfway in. The ash, a broken black tower with glowing red cracks running across its face. The same tower he had seen in visions since the first moment he touched the sword. The same place he had once died. He placed his hand on the cold surface. A low sound echoed from deep within, like a heartbeat that had waited centuries to be heard. Then the ground beneath him opened, and he fell into the dark. No scream, no fear, just falling. He landed in silence, surrounded by glass walls and floating lights. Across from him stood the golden warrior, and masked, unarmored. His face was older now, weathered, but familiar. He looked like Rion, but more ancient, more tired, more complete. "So," the man said, "you made it." Rion stepped forward slowly. "You're not my enemy," he said. "No," the man replied. "I'm your echo." Around them, walls flickered to life, showing battles long forgotten. Kelra's father, holding the sword, then handing it to another and another, until finally Rayan himself, not as he was now, but in armor, older than memory, standing before the same tower, ready to seal something away. "You gave your life once," the golden echo said, "to lock away the source of the war, but the seal is breaking. And now you've returned not by fate, but by choice." Rion shook his head slowly. "I don't remember any of this." The echo smiled faintly. "But the sword does." The blade floated between them, glowing brighter than it ever had. It split in two, one piece hovering before Rion, the other before the echo. "Only one of us can carry it now," the echo said, "and only one of us can finish it." Rion didn't move. He looked at his hands scarred, shaking. "Real, I don't want to erase what I am," he whispered. "I don't want to become you." The echo nodded. "Then become better." The two blades clashed, and the room exploded with light. The final battle was not strength, not speed, it was memory, will, heart. For every strike the echo made, Rian answered with fire. Not the fire of rage, but of purpose. He remembered Kelra's eyes when she said goodbye. He remembered the fear in her voice when she said he was more than human. He remembered the city, the children, the people he didn't even know but wanted to protect. Not because a sword told him to, but because he chose to. The echo fell back, a smile on his face. "You've passed it," he said. "The sword is yours now, fully." Rion stepped forward and caught the blade as the echo faded into light. Then the chamber cracked and the seal burst open. From deep below rose a shadow older than war, formless, Cold alive, it reached toward him like smoke made of screams. Rion didn't run. He lifted the sword, now whole again, and whispered the final words written inside the blade, "Return to silence." The sword struck downward. The light shattered the dark. The scream ended not in pain, but in peace. Far above, the ash storm cleared. Kelra saw the sky open as sunlight broke through. She dropped to her knees, a single tear falling down her cheek, not for loss, but for relief. A week later, in the rebuilt city, they held a quiet ceremony. No titles, no kings, no legends. Just two people standing before a silent blade, now resting in stone. Kelra looked at Rion, her voice soft. "This sword belonged to my father. Human, now it's yours." Rion nodded, but said nothing. Because some endings didn't need words, only peace.